to be able to track that in full robust detail, we're just not there yet as a technology and as a practice. So I like first and last touch, and then if there's some sort of signal in between that seems to be weighted heavier than the other, then you can start making assumptions around that.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have with us Neel Singh, who is the fractional chief marketing officer at IDM Works, which is a leading identity access management solutions provider. With over 20 years of experience in marketing and business strategy, Neel plays a pivotal role in shaping IDM Works' marketing efforts. In addition to his role at IDM Works, he is also the founder of Tropoli and serves as a strategic advisor for multiple organizations. His extensive experience spans across various sectors, including technology and cybersecurity, making him a valuable asset to the company as he continues to scale its offerings, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Neel, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. I'm really excited to get into some of the stuff you're doing here. We were talking off camera that you're doing some advisory work and stuff as well in the marketing and leadership space. So I'm really curious to learn more about that. But Neel, before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, let's just start with a quick little background, maybe a couple of minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you found yourself in the role of the fractional CMO at IDM Works.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm excited to speak with you and the audience here. I'm born and raised in Vancouver, west coast of Canada. Um, we had no rain so far this season, so it's been beautiful. Um, and yeah, so my background is it's a mix of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial endeavors as well as executive work. And I've been part of tech companies where we've scaled them from startup to public company. I've been in a leadership role which has overseen all facets of marketing. You can include brand in there, digital, content, creative, you name it, as well as customer experience, customer retention. And I've been part of some large corporate activities such as IPOs, exits, M&As. And so in the last couple of years, I want to take that experience of hyper growth and corporate development and marketing and apply it to other companies as a consultant. And I do have a couple of partners, and we work with companies to help them scale, help them commercialize, help them get to market. And we do it through a method of fractional leadership or advisory or project-based work. IDM Works specifically takes up, a big portion of my focus. I've known the CEO for about 10, 15 years. I've worked on several projects with him. And more recently, they have a marketing challenge. It hasn't had a fair chance to build and grow in the organization. So I jumped in as a fractional CMO last year. And, we've been working on some key initiatives to build marketing as a function in the organization, make it part of the strategic initiative of the growth of the company, and give it a fighting chance and give it some value within the organization.
So this is really cool because it's rare that I get a chance to talk to somebody who has such a depth of knowledge on something very, very specific, which that kind of marketing, business development, customer acquisition umbrella. A lot of people are very specialized in their niche, so cybersecurity or whatever, what have you. But and the marketing kind of comes secondary. But for you for that to be the entire focus, I really want to kind of get your perspective on the different levels of what the whole marketing engine is, what they all mean, how a business is going to deploy them at various stages of development. So those early kind of scrappy startup days versus, once your ship is sailing now and you got a big ship to steer, it's a completely different ball game. So let's start with Neel. What's the biggest difference in your opinion between branding, marketing, advertising? These are all words that people kind of use synonymously. Let's drill down on how we separate these as activities in the business.
So the difference between marketing and advertising.
Yeah, and branding. All three I want to kind of explore with you.
Right. Well, if you look at marketing as a discipline, it's quite wide and varied, and it's amorphous depending on which company you're speaking to.
Right.
I define marketing as the creation and delivery and communication of value. So if your product sucks, your marketing's probably gonna suck. And you can dress up a crappy product with beautiful imagery, branding, messaging, but once the customer gets to it, they're gonna define what your brand is. So if you want to split those three things up, I think well both branding, brand strategy, brand management, as well as advertising, content, all of that fits under our marketing umbrella.
Mhm.
Brand specifically, you can search online. People have so many different definitions of what a brand is. It's its own meaning. I would say the closest thing is it's your reputation and all the activities you do to build that reputation. That includes your identity, your customer experience, um, the way you're communicating and connecting with a customer. Really defines who you are, what you stand for, and what your perception is in the market. And that's typically what brand is. When you look at advertising, it's a channel and it's like paid access to your customer. And if you look at digital, for example, Google and Meta, they pretty much own the online digital marketing industry, both on the supply side and the buy side. But you are using their channels and their audiences, and jumping the line in a way, and you're paying to be able to connect with them and get them closer to making a purchasing decision. So advertising is seen through display ads that you might see on websites or on video, through search ads that you see through Google, through video ads you see on like Meta and or Instagram. And it's a way to get a quick. I wouldn't say quick. Sorry, I'm not gonna degrade it in a way by saying it's quick because it's a lot of work that goes into advertising and building a robust advertising strategy. But it's a way to shortcut and get to your audience quicker as opposed to content, um, which takes longer. Organic growth typically takes um, a more of a build up, more of a more time to kind of settle in.
Oftentimes in a lot of the businesses that I've talked to or deal with, I find that there is a cart and horse situation or a chicken and an egg situation where it's like, do we focus on brand first and then we run some advertising campaigns with a brand, or do we run some advertising campaigns and figure out what branding resonates and then kind of double down on what's working, what's not working, and there's a lot of I think pros and cons to be said for both sides. When it comes to the work that you're doing, Neil, with maybe IDM Works, we can start with what's the strategy for you? What do you think is the best approach for going to market or for acquiring new business?
Yeah, great question. So in the case of IDM Works, it's B2B services, right? So that's very different than when you're looking at a CPG product or, direct to consumer.
Mhm.
And it's in the cybersecurity space. So the approach we're taking is how do we combine a marketing funnel with a sales funnel? Marketing and sales have to be partners here. And there's a part of the journey where there's a handoff of a lead to a sales group. And that handoff sounds simple in theory, but it's probably one of the most complex things that we need to align on. And this is, if a lead converts through a website, does that mean they're ready to buy? Are they primed for sale? Are they primed for the sales folks to chat with and take them further down the funnel? And really honing in on that is important. How do you define what a marketing qualified lead is? How do you define if a prospect comes through a marketing funnel, whether or not you deploy more resources in warming them up and nurturing them and getting them over to the sales folks, or do you just hand them off? So that's part of it. And then what role does marketing play in an organization like this? So you have to define the role before you do any activities. I strongly believe that marketing plays a different or a unique role in each organization. And you can't just go in there and just start doing all the typical activities of marketing if you kind of don't know why you're there. And so in this case, it does need to lead to revenue generation in partnership with sales and partnership with the delivery organization. And so for us, we have to ensure there is strong awareness of the brand. Um, what that means is showing the expertise of the people behind the brand. Again, B2B pretty much means person to person. And so who are these expertise, these deep experts that have been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years, and who will deliver a very strong solution to you? So how do we tell the story around that? So thought leadership, events, speaking engagements, content written by the experts that appear on the blog that get, distributed through social channels that get turned into white papers, again, showing the thinking behind the company, um, and distributing that to, the C-suite in an organization, or a CISO that cares about security, and that's the approach we're taking. And that's the approach we're, you know, that we believe is going to help the company grow. Um, and it's in showing you under the hood of what this brand is about, the people that deliver the services. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I think like it's just kind of painting the picture of how do you position a company like this for the market, and then how do you play well with sales, in driving leads.
That's exactly where I was hoping you would take it to segue into the connection. And in a lot of the conversations I'm having, the connection between that marketing department or that marketing function and the sales team, or the people that actually have to like drive it all the way home. So
Yes.
when you create a marketing campaign, whatever that looks like, you kind of test a whole bunch of different ideas, what you think is going to work, what you think, might be of interest to somebody that you're trying to serve. And so if that's going to an event with a booth, or if that's running ads on search ads on Google, or you got some video campaign that you're running on Meta, uh, all of it is in an effort to tell this group of people that you do this thing and then entice them to try to come to you. Once they get there, you have all of these different messages now that you're trying to like filter through, so that the sales guys on the other side go, oh, this person came from an event, and then at the event we were promoting this thing. And so when I have
Yes.
to talk to them, I have to talk about that thing, versus over here we were doing this other like search campaign and people are looking for this. And so if I'm talking to them about this and they were looking for this, there's going to be a disconnect. So how do you manage that and navigate that challenge of keeping the channels open and maximizing everybody's opportunity for success in that process?
Yeah, I mean that's what we're calling campaign and unbox. So if there is a field event or a big marquee event or a campaign, there's a briefing process with the sales team and showing them who the ICP is, like with the ideal customer profile that we're targeting at this initiative, and what the topic is, specifically, and what activities are going to take place, and who's going to be there from our side and their side, and which key players. And so when these leads do come in, they're primed and they understand, that this isn't just a random lead coming through. It's because of this particular activity. And
Mm.
so then that equips them to have that conversation, exactly like you mentioned. But just to broaden that, the two things that bleed through all marketing activities are data and creative, right? So you need both. And whether or not you decide to use Gen AI to create some of the creative, or whether you use spreadsheets to track, your funnel, you need the two things. Marketing kind of doesn't exist without those. And so on the data side, just really understanding, um, where they're coming through in the funnel. Like, are they converting through an SEO campaign, or are they coming through the events? And understanding who they are through your CRM system. Maybe they've clicked on 5 or 6 different webinars you've done. Maybe this is the first time they're hearing about IDM Works. And if you have that understanding of your customer, that not only allows marketing to be more effective, but also sales be much more personable and understand the leads that are coming through.
Well, and something else that I think you kind of alluded to, or just grazed past here, is this necessity for the right content. that you create that goes out to the right people. And that in and of itself poses a series of challenges because I know most people when they went into business didn't want they were trying to do security or trying to do in your case leadership, but they didn't necessarily know that they were also simultaneously starting up a media company because that's essentially what's happening now with a lot of businesses is that in order for you to reach your audience, you need to be creating content that speaks to the problems and the challenges that they're having, whether that's through, like you said, white papers or use cases or case studies themselves, maybe testimonials of working with clients and kind of showing how you went from point A to point B. And so all of this serves as proof or evidence that you are who you say you are and you can do the thing that you say you can do. Um, but I guess initially, where do you start that process? Like, how do you know what's going to work and make the best educated guess?
I think you just nailed it. Educated guess. It's a science experiment, right?
Right.
Especially if you're a startup. But even during like you've seen some success and you're growing fast, you're still experimenting. So you mentioned earlier in this conversation about park before the horse. Um, you don't know until you actually get out there. You need signals. And so from a positioning standpoint, you should do a lot of homework on the market. You know, who are the buyers? What are the trends? Equip yourself with as much knowledge as you can, and then categorize your company, your product, your service in a way that's going to speak to that audience. Then put in, what makes you unique? You know, what are your feature benefits? Like you do all of this work to give you some direction and gives you a scaffolding to test your experiments through, and you launch your product or you launch your campaign, you launch a series of content, and you'll see what sticks and what doesn't. The audience will tell you, and from there, then you can come back and refine. And that can lead to you refining your campaigns and your storytelling and your messaging, or it can come back to refining your positioning. And maybe you are offering the wrong solution to the wrong audience. The product market fit can be defined through that. So, just to conclude that, it's you have to experiment, but do your best educated guess, meaning look at industry benchmarks, do your homework, see what you want to measure against, and see if those measurements, those KPIs, those assumptions hold up as you go to market.
And yeah, so test, 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 and then when you find something that works, it works. Awesome, this is great. And in most cases, that is uh there's a steady like traction that occurs because one campaign will work reasonably well enough that hey, our customer acquisition cost is low enough that this is sustainable. Our LTV exists so that we can maintain this flow, and now we just have to continue to find new pipelines and keep doubling down. But occasionally, and nobody really talks about this one, Neil, occasionally something happens where rubber really hits the pavement and much more and you get much more traction very quickly, almost to a point where you can't support that growth, and so you have to put a limiter on it. And I'm curious, have you ever experienced anything like that in the work that you've put in?
Yeah, so I was part of a startup, media tech startup, and we hit that hyper growth, and holy, it's a shit show. So,
Can imagine.
being in the position, yeah, being in the position I was in the team that I had, my team expanded very quickly to support the sales cycle. The sales team grew rapidly. It just the margins made sense, the technique made sense, and it scaled very, very quickly. So in that case, and this is an area I try to help companies or advise them in because I've been there, I've made the mistakes. But you try to hold on tight, but just know it's going to be messy. It's going to be messy, and you have to still. It's fundamentals still apply. What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing, product integrity? Are you prioritizing? Do you have a churn issue all of a sudden? Are the 50% of people showing up leaving as quick as they join or they purchase? So should you prioritize customer retention? So you still need to pick one or two things and prioritize those as other things might suffer in quality. unfortunately, you know, it feels uncomfortable. You kind of have to do it, and then once you stabilize a little bit, you get the resources, you reorg, you could put that time in to then catch up on the things that maybe you've neglected. But you do have to really see what's important if you can during that scaling period.
So when you're testing, something lands, it works really well, and then it's like, okay, well, if this is working as well as it is, then we need to do something about that. And I'm really present to this balancing act between, hey, listen, this is a promise, or this is an experiment. Nothing I can promise that is going to come true. I can't make any guarantees, but also, if this does work out, as we're all hoping it works out, we're going to be in a different pot of trouble. And so you kind of like, how do you manage expectations on that front? Because some people are like, okay, I'm only going to look at the possibility of us being absolutely 100% ridiculously successful with this campaign. And if we're not, then Neil gets fired because he didn't do a great job. Like, how do you manage that balancing act?
That's managing expectations through scenario planning is probably the most, if you're in a leadership or a management role, um, what does great look like? What does conservative look like? And what does terrible look like? And what are the learnings from those? It's just try to predict that. Now, if you do think, you go far and beyond those KPIs you thought you're going to hit, then, that should be a conversation with CFO or the CEO and unlocking more budget because you have now scaled, you have shown scale and you're showing revenue. Now you need resources. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, I think CMOs don't last more than a year and a half. I think, in an organization, maybe 2 years. And I think it's because of the overpromise. And, a marketing person or a leader needs to come in and they have to drive revenue. They have to manage brand. They have to make sure all the events are working. They have to support sales. They have to make sure all the decks are created on brand and they're supporting, they're enabling, the people that are doing business development. They have to ensure the customer's happy. Like there's a lot there. There's a lot. If you can go in and acknowledge that, but then again, put your lens towards the two or three things that really matter and then build scenarios around those
Mm.
and show what's good, what's not good, I think that will get you a lot further because you're being transparent and you're having a strategic conversation with your counterparts, with the leaders. If you show them what failure looks like, now is it because of your competency or is it because of the market did something? And at that point, it's up to it's up to the leaders to make that decision if they're going to keep you or not. But I think you have the best chance of having longevity in your role and making impact if you're showing how the sausage is made from in the sense of what works well, what doesn't work well, what it looks like, what these are the future scenarios, and what we can do about it. But you know what? I'm just gonna say this bluntly, a lot of people don't understand marketing, and a lot of CEOs don't understand it, a lot of founders don't understand it. They expect it to do one thing, lead generation or drive revenue, but
Mm.
they don't have enough attention or they don't care enough to understand how to get there. That often leads to them firing the head of marketing because the understanding isn't there.
Well, and the time that it takes and the resources, like as you mentioned, like the creative itself, just that part of the whole marketing engine is going to be a time-consuming challenge to get the messaging right, to get the images and the videos and the audio and the sound and music. And like, let's not forget how much actually goes into the back end of that for that brand to be true. I think about a lot of the kind of pseudo celebrity entrepreneurs that are out there, um, the Gary Vaynerchuks or Grant Cardones of the world. And if as soon as a Gary Vaynerchuk video pops on your timeline, if his face isn't there, you know it's him still. Like no matter what, you really it's quick and easy to identify. But to create something like that takes a considerable amount of time, and it's a very difficult thing to measure in the traditional sense. And this is one thing I'm really present to as of late. I think the guy's name is Chris Walker. He's going around talking about the dark funnel. This is the elements of your funnel that you can't necessarily measure. So I'll give you this as the example. I think this is a little, I'm ripping it off from him, so I'm going to butcher this, but follow me on it. It starts with, hey, somebody watches a podcast on YouTube, and it was like a 15-minute clip of an episode that where, me and Neil were having a conversation about brand and reputation and why it matters. Okay. 2 months go down the line. And again, that person is interested in the branding and stuff like that. And so they do a quick Google search. And because they interacted with us, somewhere along the line, the ghosts in the machine decide that me and Neil need to pop up on that person's timeline again. Well, now they click on the website and they go and they kind of look at Neil, they go and they look at Devin, and then they're like, okay, that's cool. But then Neil had some cookies installed on his website, which I get they're being abolished, but let's just play this out here. And so that allowed you to now send different message to that person on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. And now Neil looks like he's got an omnipresent brand and reputation for being this guy that gets things done and results. And then okay, that person decides to go on one, click on one of those ads and schedule a call. So where do we along that line, where do we put the attribution to? Do we say it was because of that podcast where we kind of built that trust, or do we say that it was because of that ad that made somebody click on it, or was it because that landing page had a Calendly embedded in it and allowed somebody to have access to you easier? Where do we put the attribution to this? So this is the challenge that we're all facing. I wonder if you could give us some insight into that from your perspective.
I don't think anyone's going to be able to track on that level until we have quantum computing mixed in with our marketing efforts, and then using some sort of Gen AI model to communicate with somebody that's going through that. So, what's that old adage? Advertising works, but you just don't know which half of your budget is actually contributing to that. Sorry, I just butchered that, but
Yeah.
um, it depends on your own activities and your own your own goals. But what I like to do is first and last touch. So where did they first interact with you, and then where did they convert? And in between that, you're gonna have to look at the data in a population standpoint, in a macro standpoint, and just see in general where are they interacting with the most. Is it the white paper? Can you make a correlation between the white paper and conversions, even though it's happening further up in the funnel? Is it that video that we released together on YouTube, and it went it got distributed on TikTok and Instagram, and the Instagram version seems to have a lot of views, and you see a lot of click-throughs there, or whatever it is. To be able to track that in full, robust detail, where you're just not there yet as a technology and as a practice. So I like first and last touch, and then if there's some sort of signal in between that seems to be weighted heavier than the other, then you can start making assumptions around that.
That's the science part of it, right? Testing until you find something, some evidence that your hypothesis was correct, and then really focusing in on that. I love that that's a part of it. Neil, this has been great, man. You've been very generous with your time and your wisdom, and I'm grateful for that. As we kind of reach an end of our time together here, I wonder if we can look forward a little bit at some of your goals, some of the goals that you're working for IDM Works, maybe what's on the horizon for what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I think with specifically what IDM works, I've interacted with the company for almost 15 years. I have a soft spot for them, and I really want I really want marketing to show that it has a strong impact in their overall growth and their scale. And when my journey comes to an end with them, I want to ensure that marketing has the foundation, and the people that are running it can scale it and work, diligently and mature it, as the organization matures. Uh, but using my experience, you mentioned I know a lot about the marketing piece, but I think I don't have a typical journey. I don't have a typical background. I've done a lot of different things, and it's allowed me to kind of connect the dots when I work with clients or work with people. And so I just want to be able to take my experience and be able to help other entrepreneurs or leaders and, solving their marketing and sales problems and help them commercialize. I am industry agnostic. I love technology. I love where we're going with AI. I love stuff that hasn't made it to the mainstream yet, like the quantum computing and the CRISPRs and things like that. So me and my partners are nerds about these type of things, and being able to align with some of these companies that are looking to make an impact, they're super innovative. They're pushing some sort of frontier, or they're maybe they're trying to compete against a giant. Those things light me up, and I want to use my abilities to be able to help companies like that, so that they can make an impact, and they can get a strong following or a customer base that that benefits from what they do. So that's it in a nutshell, I think.
That's exciting, man. I get a sense that you're really driven by your own sense of purpose and usefulness in being so well versed in this type of thing. And so that's really cool that the nerdy part of it is what's kind of pushing you forward. I relate to that so much. I'm watching this one girl on TikTok. She's talking about organoids, and I don't know if you've heard about this or you're familiar with it at all, but it's another step past the quantum computing thing, and they're basically making brain material into computers, which is scary and has its own
Wow.
can of worms. And there's this whole kind of subsect of people on YouTube that are in a race to build the first like actual functioning Iron Man suit and Jarvis and
Yeah.
like whatever we're coming up to here, the all these like sci-fi movies and the fiction that we were writing about is becoming more and more true, and it's both exhilarating and terrifying, and I'm glad to have met you and know you as a part of that. To wrap things up here, the last thing I would love to ask you is if there was somebody out there up to it trying to make something for themselves, trying to build a business or solve a big problem, and they're facing some challenges, what sort of advice might you offer somebody like that?
Figure out why you're doing it in the first place and stick to that. And so that'll get you through anything. If you were doing it to because you're passionate about it, then that's going to get you far. If you're doing it to make money, then think about it practically. If you're doing it to make a difference, don't, put that on a vision board or put that on your wall and just remind yourself of why you're doing it. And that will be your fuel. Be humble, be confident, but be humble, because you're going to get humbled over and over again. It's very messy, it's you're looking at people's highlight reels on, social media, but they've all gone through shit to get to where they are. So I think just equipping yourself with stories of other entrepreneurs who have made it. Look at some of the challenges they've gone through, but you have to push through some of the the roadblocks you're gonna run through. And that could mean your best friend telling you shouldn't do it, to a competitor like putting their thumb down on you. Both great signals to continue to go forward with that. So yeah, I think just figure out why you're doing what you're doing, and don't forget that, and just go after it.
Love that. Have a solid guiding North Star. Really great advice. Neil,
Yes.
if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So NeelSingh. If you search me, you should be able to find me. And then our website is tropoly.io, with TROPOLY.io. And those two are just perfect to reach out to me.
Perfect. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes so that anybody watching or listening will be able to find you easily. And on that note, if you want to get in touch with me and my team for your marketing or AI needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I will see you in the next.